For this section here, we're going to go ahead and take a look at the different UI frameworks that we have already available to us in Liferay. Okay, so we're going to look at some CSS frameworks that we have to work with, some JavaScript frameworks, as well as what FreeMarker is. We'll go ahead and take a look at that as well. Okay, so let's go ahead and dive right in. All right, so to start, Liferay has its own experience language. Now, if you're not familiar with what an experience language is, it is essentially a set of design principles, patterns, components, different things like that, that allow us to develop something that has the style of a particular product. So an easy example of this would be something like material design for Google. Okay. The material design experience language is sort of the philosophy behind the way Google creates their apps and their different products. And if you want to create something that fits into that ecosystem, you can go ahead and use those same design philosophies and develop your own product or application to create a Google app of some sort. Okay. Now for Liferay, we have that as well, and again, that's called Lexicon. Okay, so Lexicon is a design language that is based off of the atomic design theoretical approach. If you don't know what that is, it's okay. We're just going to go ahead and look at some of the different patterns and design principles we have here. Okay. All right, so the Lexicon design principles covers a number of different elements on the page, so in the actual design. So we have color, grid structure, responsive layout, typography, as well as a writing style as well. So basically there is a recommendation here for how we should be writing for some of the different buttons or comments or different things like that. Okay. Now you can go ahead and find more information about that on the Lexicon design site. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to go here and let's just go ahead and take a look at the Lexicon design docs. Okay, so we can just sort of dig into this here, and again, for your own reference, I would very much recommend going in here and just taking a look at the different documentation that we have here for Lexicon. Okay, so like I said here, if we go to the foundations, okay, in the foundations, you can go ahead and see we have those different designs that are being added here. So you'll see there's animations, the color. Okay, for example, if we look at color, you'll see that within the Lexicon design, we have a main color, primary color, white, light background. These are different hexes, different colors that we can use throughout the platform. Okay, so if you just go to Liferay, okay, so just a default vanilla instance of Liferay, you'll see some of these colors being used in different contexts. And you can see here where those contexts are, as well as the color variations if I come down here, and the secondary colors as well. So we have primaries, we have secondaries. Okay, you'll see that the secondary colors here are for things like error messages, success messages, etc., etc. Okay, so we have those colors being used throughout the platform. We can take advantage of that as well, and we'll talk about how to take advantage of these sort of design philosophies in a little bit as well with the actual implementation. Okay. All right, we also have the grid structure. So the grid structure in Lexicon is based off of sort of the bootstrap grid system here. Okay. Everything is constructed from a base 8-pixel module. Okay, so everything, all of the distances, everything like that are going to be in multiples of 8. Okay. You can see some examples here of what they're talking about. So in this example, if we had a search with some buttons as well as a little user icon, a comment box, you'll see that the distances between these different items on this particular box here are going to be distances in multiples of 8. Okay, so this is, again, just a simple example. I'm not going to go into all of the detail here of the different Lexicon information because you can go ahead and take a look at this if you're interested for the design principles. But this is what you would see behind the product. This is what is behind what looks like Liferay 7.1 DXP. Okay. You'll see, for example, the column system here. This is what I was talking about earlier with the bootstrap columns. We have a 12-column grid. Okay, and you'll see, just like if we were using Liferay, if you've done some content management before, you've seen some user cards within the platform, we have some expected distances between each of the items within that grid system. Okay. So again, we can make our content, we can make our designs look like these things using the implementation that we'll talk about here shortly. Okay. We also have, like I said, layouts, typography. Okay. Now, just as a quick note here for the typography, basically what we have here for Lexicon is that we're using the system fonts already embedded. It's just easier, more maintainable to be able to use the system fonts. Now, as you'll see when we actually build a theme together, we can go ahead and add our own fonts or make any changes that we'd like. So it's not like you're tied to this kind of thing. But in the Lexicon design, and again, like I said, through that implementation that we'll talk about here in a bit, they're just going to go ahead and use the base fonts in the system for our different operating systems. Okay. And finally, for the writing style, it's pretty simple. We have some pretty basic things here that we can see. Okay. For the writing style, it's pretty straightforward. Okay. The writing style for Lexicon, when you're creating icons or different messaging throughout the platform, is very simple. Okay. Be clear, be confident, be current, and be consistent. And you can see some examples of this here with the do's and don'ts. So for example, if we just look at be clear here, we have the do is initiates the process. Okay, so if you click on something, if there's a message for what it's going to do, something like initiates the process is very simple, clear, concise. Okay, whereas something that it's recommending not to do here is a long explanation that can potentially be unclear to the users. Okay, we want it to be very simple. For example, another example here would be confident. Okay, a do and a don't here. Do is just simply click this to save your work. Okay, a don't would be clicking this should save your work, right? Doesn't sound confident, and we would prefer the first option. So we're not going to go into too much detail here, but you can see that Lexicon here has a philosophy behind the different elements on the Liferay platform. And what we can do is we can go ahead and basically build our themes, our modules, our templates to fit within this design philosophy here in order to make it look like it fits within the Liferay ecosystem. Okay. So you may be wondering, okay, you keep mentioning the implementation. So what exactly is the implementation of Lexicon? Okay. The Lexicon implementation, the Lexicon design implementation rather, is called Clay. Okay. Now Clay is basically an implementation that is built on Bootstrap. So if you're not familiar with Bootstrap, Bootstrap is a CSS framework. Okay. So it's built on Bootstrap. It translates less to Sass. Those are the processors for some special CSS3 that we can do with Bootstrap. Okay. And it is basically comprised of HTML, scaffolding, CSS classes, and JavaScript. Okay. We're primarily going to see Clay in context of our CSS classes, and we'll actually work through that as we continue on building our themes and different things like that in later videos. All right, so we're going to go ahead and do a quick exercise together, just taking a look at some of the Clay samples. Okay, we have something on the platform already that allows us to visualize some of the Clay classes and visualize some of that implementation of the Lexicon design. Okay, so let's go ahead and do this together on our platform. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close the Lexicon documentation here. By the way, there's also Clay documentation you can find online as well that will show you specifically the different classes that you can use. And we'll go ahead and take a look at that a little bit later as well. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and make this full screen. Okay, if you are coming from the previous videos, what we've already accomplished here is setting up our Liferay instance and getting it running. We walked through the setup wizard. And now we are here on the front page. Okay. If you are not coming from the initial videos, or you have taken some time before coming back to this, just make sure you have your Liferay instance and make sure you have it up and running again, following the steps found in the first set of videos. Okay. All right, so assuming we have our Liferay instance running here, again, we called this Livingston Hotels and Resorts. That's going to be sort of the story, the set of use cases that we're going with here. we're going to go ahead and add the clay sample application to our page. Okay, just so we can look at some of these features. All right, so go ahead and click on the Add menu. It's going to be at the top right of the page. Okay, and you're going to go ahead and open up the Widgets menu here. Okay. All right, this is actually new. We've changed the Applications menu from previous versions to Widgets, so it's going to be a little bit different here. All right, in the search, we're going to go ahead and type clay, and you should see a clay sample widget. Okay. You can go ahead and simply add that to the page by clicking on the Add button right next to it. And let's go ahead and close the menu. Okay. All right, so what this does is it allows us to see a number of the clay implementations of some of those lexicon design principles that we just discussed earlier. Okay. So for example, alerts using some of those secondary colors we discussed. Okay. We have badges. Okay, buttons. All right, you can see our different buttons here. Okay, what they look like. And again, we'll have some classes that allow us to work on some of these things here. Okay, we have cards. All right, we're going to be using cards pretty extensively throughout these videos as we implement some of the designs. Okay. All right, then we have some other examples here: drop downs, form elements, icons, etc. So feel free to take some time and take a look at some of these examples. Okay, you can go ahead and look at what the implementations look like. You can go ahead and test by clicking around. And like I said, when we start building our modules and our templates, we'll be able to actually implement some of these designs for our own content. And again, what this will do for us is it will make it look like our modules and our templates, or the content that are using those templates, fit right into the Liferay ecosystem. All right, so if we want to look at an example of this, we can go ahead and also add some content here. Okay, so this is going to be using some of the exercises that we also added in the first set of videos. So if you do not have the exercises zip already in your Liferay folder, go ahead and follow the previous steps in the previous videos. Okay, but we're just going to go ahead and simply add a clay button by checking out some of the web content. Okay, so for starters here, now that we're back on the page, we're going to go ahead and remove our clay sample application. Okay, let's go ahead and just simply click on the Options menu. It's going to be at the top right. And you can go ahead and click on Remove. It will be at the bottom of the list. Click on that and click OK. All right, this will bring us back to our hello world here in the front. Okay, and now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and import some content and add a clay button just to see what it looks like within the context of one of the assets in Liferay, specifically web content. Okay, so go ahead and open up the menu. It's going to be at the top left. Okay, and again, like I said in the earlier videos, we're going to primarily be working in this site administration panel here. You'll see that it is going to say Livingston Hotels and Resorts at the top, or you'll see here just Livingston Hotels because it's a bit of a longer title there. Okay, so go ahead and open up content. I'm going to close build here and click on web content. Okay, this might take just a second to load here, so we're going to let it load. Okay, in some cases on some of the earlier builds like this, we can just go ahead and refresh the page once we click on web content. Okay. And what it will do is it will bring us to our web content page. Okay, and this is where we can add, manage web content. Like I said, we're not going to get too much into the content management aspect in this particular course, but we will look at some of the design examples through content and specifically through templates later on. Okay, so go ahead and click on the Options menu at the top right. Click on Export Import. Okay, let's go ahead and click on Import here. And what we're doing, if you're not familiar with LARs and Liferay, is we are importing a special archive file called a LAR. It's a Liferay archive file. And this will just simply contain some data for us to work with. so that we can see some of the clay examples here. Okay. So go ahead and click on Select File. Okay. Go ahead and navigate to your Liferay folder. Okay. Find the exercises folder that we unzipped in the previous videos. All right. And then come to the second section here called 02 UI Frameworks. Okay. All right, you should see a londontravel.lar. This will just be a quick example. Go ahead and click Open once you've selected the londontravel.lar. And at the bottom right, we can go to Continue, and we can go to Import. Okay. All right, so this may take a second to import here, but what you should see here is successful. When you're done, okay. And then we can go ahead and exit out of the pop-up here. So go ahead and close that pop-up. All right. And we have our Visit London content here. Okay. So what we can do here is we can open this up. Okay, so go ahead and click on the new content, Visit London. All right, so we're going to edit this so that we can go ahead and add in a clay button example and just take a look at what that looks like on the page. So again, it might take a second to load in some of these earlier builds, so feel free to click refresh to speed up the process. All right. Okay, so we already have some content here. If we want to add our clay button, okay, what we can do is we can click in this content section. Okay. All right, and I can go ahead and click on the closing tags here. You'll see as I hover over it, it says Code View. Okay, this is kind of a cool little feature in basic web content using the Alloy editor. We'll talk about the Alloy editor a little bit later. Okay, and if you want to get really fancy, you can click on this full screen option here. And what that will do is it will allow us to see our code next to the actual output of our code. Okay. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and just get, again, some simple clay code so you guys can take a look at what this actually looks like, and we'll place it in our content here. So go ahead and open up your exercises. Okay. I'll go ahead and open that up in a separate tab. All right, I'm gonna go to my Liferay folder. Okay. I'm gonna go to my front-end exercises here. 02 UI Frameworks. And there will be a clay buttons.txt. So go ahead and just simply open that up. This will have some code. Go ahead and copy the code in here. You'll see here what we're primarily working with is the button and button primary classes, and then button groups here. And we're also using some button tags. Okay, so we're just going to take a look at what this looks like. Okay, so go ahead and close that once you've copied it. Okay. All right, and after the closing p tag for the image, which is going to be on line 19 for me here, I'm going to go ahead and come down and paste the code that I copied from the text file. Okay. All right, for the output, you'll already see Book Now and See More. Okay. So we can go ahead and click Done here, and then click Publish. All right, let's go ahead and just add this to the page to go ahead and take a look, and then we can go ahead and remove it and continue on here. Okay. So go ahead and click on Go to Site. That's going to be in the Site Administration panel here, okay, right under the title. All right. Click on the Add menu here. All right, go ahead and close the Widgets section and open up Content. Okay, this will just give us an easy way to drag some content on the page for testing. Okay. So go ahead and drag the Visit London content onto the top of the page. All right, and now we can see our buttons here. Okay, so we have a button group with some links, And of course, as we'll see later, we can add some actual working links here. These could link to different pages on this on the platform where users could actually go ahead and move forward with looking at more information or booking a trip to London. Okay, so we'll look at how to actually implement these in more details later. But as you can see here, we have a Clay implementation of the buttons, okay, that are prescribed in the Lexicon design language. Okay. That's nice and easy. Let's go ahead and just remove this content, and then we'll go ahead and look at some of the other frameworks available to us as we develop in Liferay. Okay, so let's go ahead and click on Options at the top here, remove, and click OK. So just to recap this section here, we have a lexicon experience language in Liferay that gives us the design philosophy for how developers should basically design their different projects, how front-end developers should design their projects to fit into the Liferay ecosystem, okay? The implementation of this is done through Clay, okay? And as we'll see as we continue on here and create our different modules and our different templates, okay? We will be using Clay classes and we'll get that particular design, so whatever we deploy will fit into the Liferay ecosystem. Okay. All right. So that wraps up this particular section for using the CSS frameworks that we have available to us. Okay. We're going to go ahead and move on in the next video to looking at JavaScript.